Well, they can get a money order or a cashier's check, that's acceptable. A lot of people just wire transfer it from their checking account or savings account directly into escrow.
I think it's worded in the RPA. What if I don't have a check, what do I do?
Okay, well,
I'm writing an offer and they don't have a check.
okay, if they don't have a check, then they can get a money order or a cashier's check from a bank, or they can wire transfer it once the offer's accepted.
So should you try and tell them that before you go get involved with it? I mean, somewhere, you're gonna have a talk with them, you're gonna say, well, I got the earnest money, right?
Yeah.
Write in your offer.
Yes.
Okay, money deposit direct escrow. Okay, where it says check or other on the RPA. You're gonna deposit direct escrow. And that'll take care of the check.
And I find more and more people are doing that. Back, a few years ago, they would give me the check and we'd take it in. But it's just so much cleaner if they take it into escrow themselves.
You gotta make sure they do it.
Yeah, you have to check on it to make sure.
And you will get a confirmation from the escrow company.
But you make it part of your RPA, part of your contract. That the money's gonna be deposited direct to escrow. It's 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, whatever.
You have the boxes there that you check off right here towards the top.
Okay,
Get
let's,
ready to write one this tall.
let's talk about what happens if you write an offer and it's accepted and your buyer suddenly gets cold feet or has some situation that happens that makes them want to cancel that purchase within a day or two, and their money hasn't gone into escrow yet, their earnest money hasn't gone in. Here's a mistake that I see probably anymore. Every other cancellation that we get on a file, about 50% of them have this problem, and it's because from other companies, they haven't heard what really is true. So here's the truth. When a buyer and a seller are looking at a purchase agreement and all parties have signed, that is a consummated contract. And at the moment that the pin is lifted from the last person to sign the purchase agreement, or if there's a counteroffer, the last counteroffer, that earnest money deposit, if there is one, that earnest money deposit exists. If that buyer cancels before that earnest money gets into escrow, what I see on the cancellation that says no earnest money, it never got to escrow. Well, then we have to stop everything. I have to reject that cancellation. We have to have dispensation of that earnest money because it did exist. It maybe wasn't in escrow, but the intent, the promise for that existed the moment the pen was lifted from the paper. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so if that cancellation should happen, and once in a while that happens where somebody just changed their mind or some life event happened and now they can't go through with that purchase. If that happens, your cancellation has to say that the earnest money deposit was either released by the buyer to the seller or released by the seller to the buyer. Somebody has to be getting that money, either in whole or in part. If they decide that they want to split that earnest money and each keep half of it, whatever they agree to is between the buyer and the seller. But I have to have a dispensation of the earnest money before I can cancel a file. And if you're the listing agent and there's a cancellation and they're maybe squabbling over that earnest money and you get another offer on that property, we can't open a new file in SkySlope until that earnest money is settled. Believe me, we've done it before and we've regretted it every time we do it, because SkySlope doesn't understand two files,
With the
at
same
one time.
address.
yeah. We've even had a situation where Debbie and I are on SkySlope in the same file at the same time, and it's showing us two different things. So until that earnest money is back to the person who's going to get it, and we like to wait about 24 hours before opening a new file in SkySlope, just so that we don't get that confusing thing. Please help us with that, because I can't tell you the messes we've had that we can't straighten out as much as we would like to. Okay. Okay, company files and associate commissions. We are a heavily regulated industry. We're regulated by the Department of Real Estate, and we have to have good files, because our files can be audited at any time, our files can be subpoenaed at any time, or we could have somebody from the DRE walk in and say, we'd like to audit your files. We have to be prepared at all times. We can't wait to bring our files into compliance if it needs to be. And sometimes these things are not maybe a subpoena for a file doesn't happen until 2 or 3 years after it's closed. So that file has to be presentable to the parties that want to look at it at any time. We try to do the best job we can with our files, because it's important to you as an agent. It's important to John as the broker. His license is on the line for every single one of those files, as is your license for your file. Okay, so we're pretty picky about the files, and we like them to be done correctly. What you're going to encounter here in the industry in this area is that there's a lot of companies that don't have a clue, and sometimes it seems like they could care less, but we have to care. No matter what their situation is in their office, what they don't do, we go by the California law that regulates our industry, okay? So your file has to be complete, and it has to be in good condition at the closing before you get your commission check. Because once an agent has a commission check, their interest in that file wanes very quickly, and sometimes it's hard to get the documents if they've got their commission check. Does that make sense to everybody? It does.
That was motivation.
Yes, it is called motivation. Okay, also in the files, we live in a world where identity theft happens, and people are very protective, as they should be, about their identity. It's our job to protect our buyers and sellers' identity too. So when you're building a file, a lot of times we have a lot of waste paper that goes along with building that file. It's going to have very private information on it. It's going to have names, phone numbers. You may have notes that have some very personal information, and sometimes there's information that has a social security number on it. Anything that has any kind of sensitive information, name, phone number, especially social security numbers, those files have to be shredded, those papers have to be shredded. Please don't just dump something in a wastebasket at home, wherever you may be, and especially here in the office. We have these little containers over here that you see. We've got 3 of those around the office, and those are shredder files. They're locked because that information is sensitive. and we don't want just anybody to have access to that sensitive information. So if you put something in there once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, we have a company that comes, they'll bring their big poly carts in and they'll load it up with our files here, whatever's in those containers, and they'll take it out and shred it right here on site. Okay, very, very important to do that, because there can be serious consequences if that information gets out and somebody abuses it. Yes, Mandy?
I think, it was a few years back, but, a local company in town could happen to be a local realtor in town, decided that they were going to get rid of their files and dumped them in a large trash bin in the back of a building. And someone saw them and they ended up in a lot of hot water.
They got disciplined.
They got disciplined.
They did.
And it just goes to show how quick it could happen. That box, or your husband's cleaning out the garage and you don't have the box labeled right, and he says, that's 5 years old, and tosses it in the trash can and it hasn't been shredded. I literally start a pile in my corner of garage that's the shred boxes, and I drive them to the shredder and have them shredded. No one else is allowed to handle that information. I don't know if it's that way with real estate, but my notary files, no one else is allowed to handle those files except for me. So it's my responsibility to take them to the shredder. So it's a good thing to know. Don't just think that you can just toss them there and somebody else is gonna shred them for you. You gotta make sure they're shredded yourself.
Yeah. If you have a purchase agreement well, there's two things to talk about purchase agreements here. First of all, if you have a purchase agreement that your buyer has signed and they change their mind, once that signature is on there, we have to hold that file for 3 years. Maybe that offer was presented to another company and it was rejected. We have to hold on to it for 3 years. So any purchase agreement that you have written that has a signature on it that isn't going to go anyplace, you have to give it to Debbie. Debbie collects those. She just loves to get them. But it's very important to do that, okay? If you're writing an offer for somebody and they change their mind and maybe there's no signatures on it and you just want to dump it in the trash, you can't do that because it's got sensitive information on it as far as names and phone numbers and that kind of thing. So go through and make sure that all of that stuff ends up in the shredder bin and it can be processed that way. Okay, anybody need to take a break? Okay, we'll just keep going. The next page, on page 7, says desks, workstations, and offices. We have a company policy that our workstations and desks have to remain clutter-free and clear. And the company really likes everybody to take everything home at night if you can. Put it in a briefcase, take it home. If you have a permanent desk on the other side of the building, there are some file cabinets there with locks on the cabinets, and you can leave whatever you can put in there overnight if you like. And I'm not sure what the situation is on this side. Yes,
I
John?
just overheard John whisper to me, he's about ready for some flood.
Oh, he's we understand that, John.
Yeah, come on in and just mess everything.
Depending on your production, depends on how much clutter you get. I'm sorry.
Okay, but we do like to have a nice, clean, tidy office, and one way to keep it looking really nice is that if you've used a chair over in our little coffee shop area, push it in when you get through. We've got a stainless steel sink that spots, so every time you run some water over there, take a paper towel and clean it down. And I don't know about the men's bathroom, but I know in the ladies' bathroom, the ladies are really good when they dry their hands just to dry down the countertop in there too, because water collects very easily. We just try to keep it nice and neat and tidy and clean because it feels better and is better. Okay, office equipment, telephones, television screens, and a postage meter. We've got a lot of things around that are here for people to use, and we encourage you to use them. If you need to, John, I'm not sure how this is going to change, so you may have some thoughts about some of this that I'm about to say, and please jump in when it's right, or when I'm not saying the right thing. Right now we have a postage meter. In the past, we have paid for postage for if you've got a transaction going and you need to get something to a client, we've been paying for the postage for that. We don't pay for postage for mass mailings or farm letters or anything like that. That's an agent responsibility, and you want to keep your receipts for that because you can use that on your taxes. But if you have a transaction going and you need to send something to a client for signature or something, or you need to overnight it through FedEx or something, the company has in the past picked up those charges. Might that change, John?
I have no idea at this point.
Okay.
So let's just leave it the way it is.
Okay,
The only thing I ask people to do is, handle it as if you were paying for it yourself. Don't bring something up there that can get there 10 days from now and overnight it. You know, just use your own judgment.
okay,
You
makes
can
sense.
Get there, get it there.
Okay, we have the computer screens on the walls mounted throughout the building, and agents are invited to use those. From your computer, you can control what goes on, and it's really neat when somebody's got clients and they sit over there or they sit over there in that area and they want to project the MLS screen to a group of people and show them maybe properties they're going to look at, or maybe pre-shop, go through some things and look at those and whittle down your showing list. That's what they're there for. On the other side of the building, we've got all of those screens on that other side too. Some of the private offices have screens. I don't know if the individual computers are set up, but Mitz can give us a little class at some point on how to be able to project. It's actually pretty easy, isn't it, Mitz?
Very easy.
Okay. We do invite you to use those, and hope that you will. We've got a binding machine in there that really, I think, is pretty state of the art. We paid a lot of money for it. It's there for you to use. It's a little bit delicate in some ways, but if you need a class on how to use it and you want to bind a presentation, we do a lot of binding in there, and it's very easy to do. In my office, I've got this is a coil binder, but I've got the other kind that's called a comb binder, and if anybody wants to use that, I've got that in the supplies for that too, and you're welcome to use it. Anything else that's around, we try to keep things here for you, like staplers and 3-hole punches, 2-hole punches, and the postage meter. If you need to weigh something, we've got all kinds of things that are here for you to use, and you're welcome to use them. I would just say that if something belongs to an agent, don't use somebody else's stuff without asking and getting their permission. Certainly don't walk away with it. And the same with the refrigerator. We have our lovely refrigerator over there. Everybody is invited to put stuff in there if you want to bring a lunch or bring something, or you want to bring something to share. Please do. It's there for all of us, the freezer and the refrigerator both. However, if you put something in there and forget it, pretty soon we'll all know that it's been forgotten and we have to clean out that refrigerator. So if you've got something in it, please remember to take it out or throw it away. If you put leftovers from going out to lunch, we did have a policy, and I don't know if we're still doing it.
Fridays.
Every Friday, the cleaning crew that comes in the evening
Throws
takes everything out. Are they still doing that?
Everything on the shelves. They don't throw out like condiments, you know, they are condiments in the door. They don't throw those out, but anything left on the shelves goes.
Yeah. So if you have
Containers and all.
yes, containers and all, and that's kind of a warning. If you've got something in a nice container and you don't want to lose that container, they take no pity on whether it was expensive or not. Out it goes. Okay.
You know, Marcia, I'd like everybody to know, and hopefully everybody does, but new people that, you know, if you wanna invite friends of yours, clients, come down and use this thing, okay? If you have 40 people and you wanna kick off your business, invite them and do something, and, you know, people come in and clean up after, and just use it. Let them know where you work, impress them.
That's true. We've actually had some nice events, John, that the agents have done. We had a couple of ladies a couple of years ago that were giving Thanksgiving pies to clients. This is kind of a Buffini project. And they had their pies here and invited their people to come down. And that was a nice event. And we've had other people host different things for clients, and it works out really nice. And it is a nice place to come. Okay. Error and omission insurance, let's talk about that, and office fees and expenses. I'm not going to go over office fees and expenses right now, John, because this may be changing somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about error and omission insurance. The company carries this. It's a very important thing to have. A lot of companies don't have it. At least one company in town is self-insured, and I'm not sure who they're actually insuring with that self-insured thing, because I don't think the agents get the benefit of it if there's a problem. But we do have.
That pretty much means you don't have any.
It does, yes.
What do you think, John?
But we do have it, and it does not cover fraud, and it doesn't cover punitive damages. But if there's something that happens, and I don't even remember the last time we've used that, it's been quite a while.
Thanks to you, Marcia, we have it. But let me tell you, should we have to use it? There's a $5,000 deductible. It's $2 million coverage, which is about twice what the average carries. It's the lowest deductible you can get. We can all sleep at night, as long as we're not defrauding somebody, and know that no matter what happens, we were sued one time for $7 million over a ranch in Kermit. And the trial went a little over 30 days, and we were sued on 4 different
Counts.
counts. Remember what they all were now, but Dave McNamara represented us. I don't know how many $100,000 worth of
Legal fees.
legal fees. We paid $5,000 one time and one on all 4 deals, but you don't sleep a lot as a broker when that stuff is going on. Because still could have lost more at that time, I think, recovered for $1 million. And still could have cost us a lot of money. But it's just nice to have it. It's probably the worst thing to ever happen in the real estate industry, because I remember there was no deductible and $1,100 probably 30 years ago when it became, something. Now it's hefty. And, it's just nice to have the coverage.
It is, it's a great safety net. I'm not going to go over transaction costs because John is doing a lot of restructuring right now, and I'm sure he'll have a special meeting when we get to the point of talking about that. But let's talk about signs. And this actually has changed a little bit recently too. Century 21 Corporate redesigned our logo a couple of years ago within the last year, and we've had to order signs last year. You've got some choices now as an agent, whether you want to use a generic company sign, which the company has, or you can order signs that have your phone number and your photograph on it if you like. Those would be at your expense. Remember, they're a part of your tax write-off. Yes, there's one for Erica right there in that window. So you've got a choice, and it's awfully nice to brand yourself. You should be branding yourself. That's an important thing to do nowadays, okay? Open house signs, the same thing. The agent pays for the open house sign. And usually, I would say 6 to 8 or 10 open house signs would be an appropriate number. Okay. Page 11 goes into some of the corporate history with Century 21, how it was founded, when it was founded. Through Century 21, we have awards, rewards, and recognition. We also do some of that through our company here too. And I think everybody likes to be rewarded or recognized for the good that they do, and so on and so forth. Century 21 by production has an award called the, John's bringing something up.
This thing's been in there for a couple of weeks, and I finally took it out of the 45 years with Century 21. They just sent this. Nobody has a 50-year. The company's not that old. It was formed in 72. Chuck bought the franchise in 74, October. So we took, I don't know how many trophy cases out of here, and the decorator didn't want to bring any of them back, but I'm just about to take them out of my shop. There are boxes full of them, and at least add a trophy case with our most important thing. I think John feels like we've been sterile long enough, a couple of years.
Gosh, we've got a nice wall right there, John, that
Yeah, the only thing, if we put a trophy case there, I don't think we can walk by it.
walk by it. Well, that's probably true.
It's gonna stick out too far, but maybe under the sign over there.
Yes.
If the sign is, sign's not legitimate anymore.
It also looked nice next to the, in that sitting area there.
There's not enough room there either, without moving that thing back, but we'll do something. We'll put them somewhere where they were all evident when you came in.
Yeah, we got that little corner there too.
But anyway, this is, you're the first to see this, so.
Very nice.
Would have rather had a Rolex.
So there are Centurion Awards for both the agent and the company. And as you wander around the office, you'll see a lot of those Centurion Awards, mostly in the offices now because we don't have much on our desks anymore. But those are something to aspire to. Takes a lot of production, but it certainly is possible, okay? If not the dollar amount, the unit amount, and I'm not sure what the number of units is now, right around 70 units, which is quite a bit, but not impossible. Okay, every company has to publish in its policies and procedures what its commission rate is for listings, and we've got that published right here. John has set the commission rate for our company at 6% for residential listings, okay? There is not a standardized rate. There is nothing determined by any of the Association of Realtors, the DRE, or anybody else. Each and every office sets their own commission rate themselves, and they have to have that published someplace, a written policy on it. So ours is 6%. Does that mean that you can't go below 6%? In today's real estate arena, it's more difficult than ever to get a 6% listing. We still get a lot of them. You may go down to 5% if you have to, but John likes you to try for that 6% for what we bring to the table, which is a tremendous amount, okay? So do your best to get 6%. If you can't, you can go down to 5%, but we don't go below the 5%. If you ever have a reason, you have to talk to John Senior or John Junior and get their permission, okay?
You know, we had a situation, and I'm not throwing Dusty under the bus, because Dusty's pretty clever, okay? We had a situation where he took a 4% listing. And John said, no, we don't do that. And so Dusty went back and he got 5, okay? Well, Dusty made more on that extra 1% than the company does. But keep those things in mind, because they'll, you know, we've been through the purple bricks thing, okay, where everybody, well, they're gone. In fact, Australia, where they came from. So we got every discount broker in the country. If they want that, they need to get it, because they're getting pretty much taken advantage of. I would like to think we can earn the extra. 5 is becoming more and more commonplace, I'll put it that way. But it's worth what we do to get 6.
Yes.
And when I first came into the business, there were a lot of people getting 7.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of areas, that was common. So, you know, our business has changed in that area. The only thing saving us a little bit is prices. You know, being it's we do a lot if we're doing it right for what we get. If we're doing it right, giving the service, going through what we go through to get to the end. Yes. With a lot of what we work for, our discount folks on the other side.
Okay, so sometimes you're going to have the opportunity to list something perhaps that isn't very pricey. Maybe you've got a $7,000 or a $10,000 lot or mobile home or something like that. A 6% commission on something like that isn't even going to buy you lunch at McDonald's. So we have a minimum commission, which is $1,500 per side. And if you've got a $7,000 mobile home and somebody thinks that $3,000 is too much, the liability is the same for that $7,000 mobile home as it might be for $1 million property. We have a lot of liability for everything we do, and that $1,500 per side allows the company to make a profit and it allows the agent to get paid for the time that you spend on something. So just remember, it's always going to be, and you can do the math with your client if you're looking at listing something in a lower price range. Do the math, the difference between a 6% commission and $3,000, $1,500 per side. Do the math and see what comes out to be best, okay? Okay, one of the founding reasons for Century 21 ever so many years ago was being able to refer people, and we do a lot of referral business here. We can refer around the world. We've got Century 21 companies all around the world now, and all over the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So when you're working with somebody, buyer or seller, ask them, do they have to sell anything to buy? Are they going to be selling something? They may contact you, or they may be referred to you as a buyer, but they may have to sell something, and you could certainly list that. Maybe they're from out of the area. Maybe the seller that you're working with is going to be moving to Mississippi or Toronto. You can refer them, and when you refer them, you're going to get, generally it's 25% commission from that agent that you referred it to, which can be pretty healthy sometimes. So,
Marcia, on that
Yes.
note, last week, Benny got a check. It was just over $7,000, which is a commission here on a referral to Carmel.
yes,
Just a referral.
yep,
Called, set it up, they sold it, check comes. We don't think of that.
yeah. Yeah, that should be with every person you come in contact with when you're doing business. You should ask about referrals. Are they coming? Are they going? And it's so easy to do because you can even personalize that referral and contact the agent yourself. Pick out an agent that you think will work well with the person that you're referring, and it's just as simple as a phone call. Okay, any questions about referrals?
You can tailor those things too. He got 30%. He's also done, he has friends in Bakersfield. And, he sold property in Bakersfield and went through all that. And since then, the listing, I think it's the listing that he sold, he's built an alliance with the agent now. And he's splitting some things 50-50. And not having to go or join the board and that type of thing. So, keep that in mind.
Yes, if you're going to be making a referral and you don't know an agent in that location, there are a couple of ways about how to get an agent there. One is to go on to century21.com and look for a company. We're almost finding that it's easier just to put the name of the city that your person is going to and Century 21 real estate and see what pops up. If there's a Century 21 company there, it does require a referral. There is a referral form in Zip Forms, and I think Debbie may have some on hand that she's signed. There are outbound referrals and inbound referrals. As you make relationships around the state, around the country, which is pretty easy to do, you'll get referrals from agents, and that would be an inbound referral. When you get that inbound referral, then you're promising to give up a portion of your commission to the agent that referred you, because you're getting business that you wouldn't have had otherwise without that referral coming in. We actually do quite a few referrals here, and it can be a very lucrative part of your business just by thinking about it and asking for it. Okay? The next section is on floor time and the logbook that goes along with floor time. Floor time is both a privilege and a necessity. We need somebody to cover the phones. They don't ring as much as they used to, but we still do get very good calls coming in up there. And it's a good thing for everybody that's trying to build their real estate practice to take some floor time. We want you to be trained a little bit before you go up there. You need to be proficient with the MLS. Just getting on there and practicing, spending some time with Jerry is good. Spend a few hours up there and find out how they do things. And
Marcia, I think new agents may need to know that the reason we don't get the calls we used to get, because now signs are personalized. They've got, what do they call them, barcodes,
yes,
where you get on the barcodes and get all your information, all that. So you don't get the calls to the floor that you used to get before the agent had the identity. Listings have always been the name of the game, but they're really the name of the game now. Sarita announced 2 new listings that she was getting last Wednesday. She was here yesterday doing the paperwork, both sold, one for 10,000 more. It's so important to list. And that's something that a listing contract used to be 1 page, now it's 3. It's filling in the blanks. Get it listed, it will sell as long as you're close on your price. And go out and list. You don't have to wait for all this kind of stuff to start getting that. But the reason you don't get the calls anymore is because of the business and the way it's handled, and not the fact that people aren't buying it or aren't coming through the office.
that's true. People start on the internet and a lot of times get a contact through the internet. But usually the business that does come in on the floor is pretty reliable business. So it's good to be up there and be ready and be trained for it.
Well, there are still people like me that don't go on the internet to look for everything. And I still pick up the phone probably before I text. So those are the ones who are wanting to catch.
Okay. Some of this we've already talked about, so I'm not going to go through this section by section. We've talked about training and making ourselves available for that. Our Wednesday office meetings, though, we have not talked about, and it's really important to come to those Wednesday office meetings. An hour and a half once a week for us all to get together is very important. First, it's very meaningful to John. He likes to have us all together. But the other thing is, when we're here together, we get to know each other, we get to rely upon each other, and we exchange information. So please be sure to come to the office meetings. It's just very important. Social media, we're finding out more and more how important social media is. And Mitz is doing his very best to try to get us all hooked into being on social media. If you haven't got a presence, it is important. And spend some time. If you get lost in the process, Mitz is available. We've got Shannon that comes up once a month or so. But jump in and explore. Explore what's best for you. There's different platforms now. Advertising and marketing. Marketing is one of the most important things that we do. And advertising, years ago, the only advertising that was available was putting an ad in the paper. Now nobody really advertises in the newspaper anymore because nobody really reads the newspaper. So we have to be very creative in what we do to advertise and to market a property. And really and truly, everything that we do is marketing a property. From the career apparel and the name tags that we wear, everything. We're going to have a class in marketing, and the marketing book that we have and use coming up pretty soon, so we'll be going into that. All advertising that we do, all marketing must have our DRE number on it, must have your individual DRE numbers on it. Everything that we do, everything that's our first point of contact, so whether it's a website or a brochure that you do, your card certainly has your DRE number on it. Everything has to have a DRE number. If you're doing a mass mailing that, let's say you're doing a postcard campaign, sending it out, or any kind of mass mailing to a farm or a selected group of people, you have to have two things on that. The first thing that you have to have is that each Century 21 office is independently owned and operated. That's required by corporate. Do you have any idea why it's required by corporate? It's because corporate, Century 21 corporate, does not own a real estate company. There are no corporately owned stores. Every single Century 21 office is owned by a broker like John Kerry. Okay? Century 21 doesn't interfere in our business and tell us how to run our business. They don't tell us what to put in our policies and procedures. They don't tell us anything to do. They provide tools for us. And we pay for those tools through our franchise fee. But they are not a part of the ownership of this company, and they don't make the policy for it. The other thing that your mass mailings have to have is something that says, if your property is currently listed with another agent, this is not a solicitation. It's against our code of ethics, and there may be some DRE stuff in there too, that says we cannot go out and solicit another agent's listing. Okay? Let's think about that in terms of ourselves. If we have a listing and we put a sign on it, we don't want somebody from another company calling up and say, I see you've got a Century 21 sign on your property. Why don't you dump those people and list with me? For whatever reason. I'll do it more effectively, I'll do it cheaper, whatever their reason may be. Nobody can call your client while that property is listed. Just like we can't call anybody else's client while a property's listed. But if you're doing a mass mailing and maybe you're sending out 300 or 500 postcards, you can't go through every one of those postcards to make sure you're not infringing on another agent's territory. So if you have that disclaimer in there, if your property is currently listed, this is not a solicitation, protects you. But you have to have that on there, otherwise it is a solicitation to another company's listing. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. If you're going to do any kind of a marketing campaign or an advertising campaign, you are supposed to work up whatever it is that you're going to do and then get that approved by management. Because ultimately, if you put something out there that you may think is absolutely perfectly fine, and it may be, but it may infringe upon what we have to do for Century 21, the company needs to approve whatever you do in every case, okay? So please give them that opportunity. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the DRE and their regulatory requirements. We have to renew our license every 4 years, and we have to have 45 hours of continuing education in order to renew that license. I'm sure all of you know that already. Licensed and unlicensed assistants. As you progress in your career and you get very busy, it's a natural progression to hire an assistant or hire somebody to help you. We have a policy here that we do not allow unlicensed assistants. There's just too much liability that goes with that. It's too easy for an unlicensed person to do something that requires a license, like quote a price or give some advice. So we have that policy. Teams and groups, we really at the present time don't have any teams or groups, but we could have in the future. If you're interested in something like that, find out what it takes and how to do it properly, especially if you have a team name. Okay. There's a list here. We won't go into this right now, but when you get ready to renew your list on page 18, it goes into some of our associate requirements and the requirements for renewing your license, so on and so forth. Okay. Procedure has to do with floor duty, and I think the mission statement for floor duty is this: as a cohesive profit center for the development of business in 221C Watson, floor team shall provide superior service to callers and walk-ins. Many of our agents that are proficient on the MLS and have spent a little bit of time sitting in up there finding out how the routine is welcome to sign up for floor time. We have a program now online where you go in and sign up for that. They set the schedule about once a month, and that floor time then is available for everybody. We have 2 shifts. We have a morning shift that goes from 8:30 to, I believe it's about 1 o'clock, and then from 1 to 5:30. If by chance you are on the schedule and you can't show up for your floor time that day, it's up to the agent to find a replacement. Right now, if you know in advance that you can't make it, you can list on the online site that shift is available and somebody may take it. If you can't find anybody, what you cannot do is call Debbie or Elva or John and say, I can't make it today, sorry. Somebody has to cover that shift, and our staff just doesn't have the time to go around trying to find a replacement. So that's up to each individual agent to do. When people are on the floor, they're taking turns back and forth. One person takes a call and then passes that logbook to the next agent, and the next call that comes in that's a viable call. If they're calling for another agent, you have to pass that call on to that agent that they called for. If they aren't working with an agent and they're not asking for somebody from our company, then that's usually determined to be an active call, and you as an agent get to take that call. Your goal is to set up an appointment and to serve their needs, whether they're buyers or sellers. Okay? There is a dress code for being on the floor, and it's pretty much what we would normally wear, but we've had people come extremely casually, thinking that they're just going to be sitting there on the floor, and it isn't that important. It's very important. We have to be ready the minute somebody calls in and needs us, to go out on that appointment. Your goal is to get an appointment and to go. That's what John wants you to do. Go for that appointment.
Plus, yep, walk-ins front door.
Yes, we do sometimes get walk-ins, and our job is to work with them too and serve their needs at the time.
So if we're on the floor and someone says, can you meet right now?
You go,
Go.
yes, because that's business at hand, and they may not be available later on, so your job is to just go. And if you have to lock up the building, if you're here on a weekend, that business is more important than at that point keeping the door open. Right, John? You like them to lock up and go?
Lock it up, take care of that client.
And you can forward that phone to the route diverter, so somebody else will answer the phone, or
Yes,
you can take it with you.
yes. At the end of the day, whoever's on the floor, and we've got two people, will determine between themselves who's going to take the diverter that night. And they leave a few minutes early, set the, then the person that, so they can be home or be out of their car whenever the evening calls start coming in. The last person here then sets the diverter for that person's number, and then the person on diverter gets whatever calls come in that night. And a lot of times there's pretty good calls that can come in. People get home from work, they look at the internet, or they've seen something as they've been traveling, and they like to get on the phone and find out. So there are good calls that do come in. Okay. Any questions about floor time at all? It's a little daunting until you do your first time or two up there, and then it becomes routine, but I can't stress how much it is important for you to be proficient in the MLS and be able to look things up. And Jerry's very good at telling you how to find a blue house just off of Blackstone without having an address for it, so rely on Jerry. Okay, SkySlope policy and procedure. This is very important. SkySlope is easy to use, but you have to do it. You have to get in when you've got a transaction, a listing or a sale. Everything that you do needs to be in SkySlope within 24 hours. First, for listings, it's important because if you as a listing agent go out and take a listing, it says on that listing agreement that management has up to 5 days to make a decision about whether they want that listing or the terms that the agent set up in that listing. So it's my job to review those listings and make sure that everything there is okay. John mentioned we had one not too long ago that was a 4% commission. Something like that we have to take to senior management and let them make a decision about what needs to be done. It's not my decision or Debbie's decision. It's senior management that's going to make those determinations, okay? But if that listing isn't put in until 2 or 3 weeks or a month or so after it's listed, then I can't do my job, and the opportunity, if there's something that needs to be amended on that, is lost, and we're stuck with something that could potentially be a problem. So please, whether it's a listing, whether it's a purchase, start building that file within 24 hours and build it as you go. What the DRE likes is to see, if they're looking at something, is to see that an agent has been very active in putting things into that file and putting communication into the file. Everything that you write on, everything that you have about a listing or a sale needs to go into your SkySlope file without question, without file. And even still, we have agents that say, well, I didn't think that was important, so I didn't put it in. if you had it, it was important. You never know what can save you in a litigious situation until you need it. And if it's there and it can help you, it's the most wonderful thing in the world. If you said, oh, I had that, but I threw it away, or I don't remember exactly what it said, but I think I did this, it doesn't count for anything because you can't use it if it isn't there, okay? The DRE wants everything in your file. Now, there's some things that are required. And those required things are going to show up as requirements in your SkySlope checklist. I'm going to tell you that a listing agreement and a purchase agreement is required. An agency disclosure is required. On 1 to 4 units, TDS and an SPQ is required. But there's a lot of other things that you may have that says not required in SkySlope, but if you've got it, it needs to be in the file because it may be required for the kind of transaction you're working on or the specific one, okay? Maybe you had an addendum about a seller financial disclosure addendum where the seller is going to carry paper. That's not required on every file, but if your seller's carrying back money on this transaction, it's required for that file. So we need everything in there, every scrap of paper, every note, every communication. And the easiest way to do this in SkySlope, as you start building your SkySlope file, the very first page is going to give you, the very first tab where you start putting information in, is going to give you an email address for that file. If you either CC or forward every email regarding that property that you get into SkySlope, make it a habit, write down that email address immediately and put it in. You're building your file the way the DRE likes to see it. You're putting that communication in. Let's say you get an email from a listing agent with the purchase agreement and all of the disclosures coming back to you in that email. When you forward that to SkySlope, it takes all of those disclosures, it separates them from the email and puts them in your documents. It makes your job so simple because we still have people that don't understand this, and they'll get that email, they'll print everything out, and then they'll scan it right back into SkySlope. First of all, you're wasting a tremendous amount of paper. You're wasting a lot of time. You're using effort that you could be expending on some other more productive activity. All you have to do is forward it into SkySlope. It separates it into your documents. All you have to do is go into your documents and it says RPA. You load that up into your checklist then, and I can't tell you how much time it saves and how much paper it saves. If you give your SkySlope address to your escrow officer and ask her to forward everything directly into or to CC everything into that file, when your escrow officer sends the natural hazard disclosure and your prelim, it goes directly into SkySlope. It's right there, okay? Makes it so nice. If we have both sides of a transaction, and we've got the listing first, of course, then when we get an agent from our company that has the purchase, we're going to add that agent as a secondary agent with access to that file. We don't want two separate files. It's too much to have to review both files and have duplicates of everything. We want to put it into one file and have both agents have access to that file. Okay, so it's very easy to do. And that way that file is built as you go, and everybody is in good compliance. if you have a listing and for some reason that listing, that seller wants to cancel the listing before the time that it would normally expire, if it hasn't sold, then you have to have permission from John Jr. or John Sr. about canceling that listing. Debbie and I can't make that decision, Mitz can't make that decision. Senior management makes the decision about when a listing can be canceled, okay? And that has to be on the cancellation, their signature has to be, otherwise we can't process it. Before close of escrow, you want to make sure that your file is in good condition. I would say I generally, under most conditions, review a file about 4 or 5 times. When the listing is first put in, I look at it then and look at all of the documents that are in there. When a transaction is added or a transaction is added into SkySlope, usually there's 5 documents that come right away, and they're the ones that are bundled. It's going to be the purchase agreement, the agency disclosure, the RCSD, and the wire fraud advisory. All of those go in, and that's usually the first time that I see the file. Then usually you get your disclosures, and I go through all of those disclosures. Then you start getting your reports. You're going to get your NHD, your prelim, your pest inspection, your home inspection, those kinds of things. I go in and take a look at those. And then sometimes there's some extra things that come in, but then I look at it at the closing. So I'm usually into each file about 4 to 5 times. If you wait until the end and put everything in, and I get 30 documents or 35 documents all at one time, that takes a huge amount of time. It may take me an hour to review that file. I usually will save that, or maybe I'll just do a few documents at a time. Because when I'm looking at 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 documents, I can serve a lot more agents than spending an hour with one file. Okay, so please build your files as you go. Remember, everything's supposed to be in there within 24 hours. And if your file is all finished, when the closing comes, all we have to do is put the closing in, and I review the closing statement and your check. We try to pay you the same day that the closing happens, and Debbie processes it. In a really, really busy, heavy market, we can get backlogged, and sometimes we'll only pay twice a week, but it's been a long time since we've done that because we try to keep up with those files. But if your file isn't complete, then you may have a delay, because we can't issue your check until everything is in the file and everything is signed and it's basically been signed off by management for you to get your check. So think ahead and get your files ready and get your check the same day that you have a closing, because you've earned it. Okay. Let's take a little short break,